Hi, how are you? Before we start, this is a warning. This podcast contains 3 things that every listener needs to know about. It contains strong language, adult themes, and a thick Scottish accent. It might not be suitable for everyone. It starts with a feeling. It might be a feeling you don't recognise. It could be a feeling like admiration, or it could feel like lust. Or it might start as hate. Pretty soon this feeling can evolve, and when it does, it can become dangerous. At what point does the feeling become obsession? Welcome to the Extraordinary Stories podcast. Hey, how are you? Are you well? Are you good? I am. So, welcome to another episode. I just want to start, as I usually do, with a couple of shout outs, a couple of hellos. So, I'm going to say hi to Donna McCune and her son, who are both listening to the podcast. So, thanks very much. Jason Abercrombie, hello. Welcome along. Thank you for your story that you sent me through a Facebook page this week. That was really nice of you. I will get to that story at some point. Sarah Louise and her pit bull Luna, and the beauty that is Luna. She's an absolutely gorgeous dog. So, hi. I'm going to start by telling you this episode wasn't going to be about obsession. That was going to be later down the line. That was something I was coming to look at. I'd actually begun to research a story that I thought was absolutely brilliant. So I don't know if any of you remember this story. There was a boy years ago who wandered out of a forest in Germany, and he said he'd been living there for 5 years. He had no clue what his name was, and that the reason he'd been there is because his father had taken him there when his mother had died, and they'd gone to bury her body, and that they'd just been moving around the forest for 5 years. And I thought, I've always thought, what a brilliant story that is. What a fucking great story that is to tell. I'm getting really into it. I'm thinking, this is going to be great. This story is going to be absolutely brilliant. I do a little bit more research. Turns out the whole thing was fake. Turns out the boy had just lied. He was actually just a teenage runaway who had actually just created this whole entire fucking story. I was livid. I was so annoyed because I was like, that would have been a bloody brilliant story to tell. Anyway, so that's why we're doing obsession this week. So I've got 2 stories for you that explore obsession, but they do it in very different ways. So obsessions, we've all got them. They vary really widely. Your obsession might be, I don't know, books. Maybe it's a particular person. Maybe it's podcasts. I think that's a common one. It might even be something you love, but you don't even really know that you're crossing over into being obsessed with it. Is obsession always a bad thing? Where is the line? I want to know. This is what really fascinates me. Where is the line between being excited and being passionate and being really driven about something? Where does that cross over into obsession? Okay, let's dive in to these 2 stories. Okay, let's go. Tracy Morgan was 25 years old. She was married. She was a confident and happy young woman living in Hampshire, England, and she worked for the Royal Navy. She was a personal assistant at the time, but her ambition, she wanted to become a welfare officer. She had this drive, this desire in her to make other people's lives the best that they could possibly be. So we're in 1993. And she's working in the general office, and it's a really busy office, so there's people coming in, out all of the time. She's getting to meet lots and lots of people, and she's always interacting with lots of different staff members. So one of the staff members that she has some interaction with is a man called Anthony Burstow. Now, he was a Royal Navy employee, and generally he was considered a bit of a loner. He was described by other employees as being depressed and someone who felt sorry for themselves. So Tracy, she was a kind soul, and she didn't really like to see people being isolated. So when she would sort of see him sitting on his own at lunch sometimes, so they had like a big sort of lunch area, a big canteen, she would invite him over and she would say, look, why don't you come and, sit, have your lunch with us, or have a coffee with me at this table. And, she tried to engage him really. She tried to speak to him. She went home and she said to her husband, oh, there's this guy at work and I just feel so sorry for him because nobody speaks to him. No one talks to him. And so, I think this is crazy. But Tracy and her husband, they both felt so sorry for him that sometimes when they were going for a day out, they would invite him along just so that he would have some company for the day, or just so that he would, be able to interact with other people. A sort of, I guess, care in the community type kind of thing. Anthony Burstow was married, but the marriage wasn't doing very well. And the reason for that is that his wife also worked for the Navy and she was stationed abroad 11 months of the year. So really, it was difficult for him to have a working marriage. So it was really kind of just a marriage on paper, not really actually working out. Now, Tracy was the only female in her department, and she was the only person in the whole organisation to ever make any effort with Anthony Burstow. So now Tracy's going about her normal life. She's finishing work. She's going to the shops to get dinner. She's coming home. She's going out for a drink with her husband, meeting up with friends, going to a local fitness class, shopping at the weekends, all the things that a person does in their life. But with each of these activities, something else is happening, or rather, someone else. Anthony Burstow begins to appear everywhere that Tracy goes. Now, he's not hiding. He's not pretending he's not there. He's not watching her from a distance. He'd wave. He would beep the horn of his car to say hello. Now Tracy's obviously thinking, what the hell is going on here? Why is he everywhere that I go? So this is classic, and you hear it time and time again, and it always does my head in. Tracy is very aware that this isn't right. He should not be parked outside of the gym that she's going to. He should not be appearing in the shops that she's shopping in. And she is worried, but she does the classic, I'm overreacting. I think I'm just being silly. I'm imagining it. I'll just put it to the back of my mind. No, if you ever know that something's not right, if your gut is telling you something's not right, if he's appearing where he shouldn't, don't ignore it. So Tracy starts seeing him in the rear view mirror of her car, on her way to work and on her way home from work. When her and her husband were going out for dinner or going out for a drink, this is so creepy, this really freaks me out, he would already be in the pub or the restaurant that they were going to. How the hell was he working out where they were going? Like, he'd already be there. That is so peculiar. A man is following you to work, back from work, popping up wherever you go. You go out for a casual drink with your husband one night to a random pub, and the same man is already in the pub. Whew. What's awful here for Tracy is that she still has to see him all the time in work. Now, I wonder if you're thinking along the lines that I was thinking when I was going through this. I thought, why has she not confronted him? Why has she not gone up to him in the workplace and said, "Oh, what are you doing? Why are you following me?" But then, I don't know. Then I rethought it and I was like, actually, if I was in that position, if someone has the capacity to actually be following you and observing your every move, do you really want further interaction? I don't know, it just made me think at this point, I guess there's a couple of options here. Either you go and you confront them, or you avoid them as much as possible. And I suppose it depends how scared you are at that point. So she doesn't confront him. But what she starts to notice is that at lunchtimes, he would leave the lunch area half an hour earlier than everyone else. Now, where was he going? She didn't know. And the next thing she notices is that in her house, things start being moved around. Just little things, here and there. A vase would be in a different place when she came home. Some bedding that she had previously washed and ironed would suddenly be in a different room from where she'd left it. So one evening, she's going to bed. Now, she's laying out her clothes for the next day, so she's, putting out her whatever her uniform is for work or whatever it is that she wears. She's going through her drawers, and she starts to realise that some of her underwear is missing. So obviously, she's a bit freaked out, but she thinks, well, I'll go to bed and I'll figure it out tomorrow. It could be it's somewhere else in the house. It could be I put it in the washing and it's just ended up somewhere else. It'll turn up. I mean, Tracy, I don't think it's going to turn up. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't think it's going to turn up. On this same night, she goes to the bathroom just before she goes to bed to take her contraceptive pill. So she gets out the packet and she notices 5 of the tablets are missing. So then she starts thinking, hang on, have I accidentally taken extra tablets? But she's asking herself that question, but she knows in her mind, no, she hasn't. Those tablets have they've vanished. I mean, stealing someone's contraceptive tablets, that's dark. That is so dark. So Tracy doesn't want to go to the police or the naval authorities because she thinks they will say, nah, you're mad. She thinks that she's going to walk in there and say, listen, here's the situation. There's a guy that's kind of following me up and down the road to work, and also my bra and my knickers and my contraceptive pills are going missing, and they're going to say, that's a bit crazy and a bit far-fetched, so just calm yourself down. Now, it's important to remember this is 1993, and in the UK, there are no laws in place yet that would allow police to do anything really. If you thought someone was following you or harassing you in that way, if someone was watching you from a distance, there was no law in place that police could actually really do anything about it. So this continues, the watching, the following her to work, and Tracy and her husband Andy, they're now feeling really terrorised. Anthony Barstow is really affecting their life, but they choose that they're just going to handle it themselves. But the couple's behaviour, it begins to change naturally. Of course, they're under a hell of a pressure here. It starts to change and people around them, well, they begin to notice. Suddenly, the couple are not turning up to family dinners. Now, they would have never missed a family dinner, ever, before this. They would never have missed a birthday of a friend. But suddenly, they're skipping all of these events. And it's because they're becoming scared to leave the house. So Anthony Barstow really ramps up his behaviour and he begins calling their house day and night. Sometimes 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. And it was just to tell them that he was nearby. Or sometimes just not to say anything. Sometimes he'd just be completely silent. He would put cards and letters through their door, making sure that they knew he was outside. He was outside in his car and he wanted them to know. This freaky fucker, it's so creepy. Honestly, I think if somebody was outside my house that whole time, I would just be so freaked out. Psychologist Jessica Wilkes, I love this. She says of stalkers, the strongest power that they have is the ability to shake someone's belief in a happy and a safe world. They're able to imprison a victim by just simply being a presence which can never be fully known, understood, or predicted. So back to the law and the police. Tracy did go to the police eventually. And I'm not going to bash the police here, the police. I'm not going to bash you because I just really think at that time they actually weren't equipped to really deal with this. So they listened to her, they heard the story, But there was just nothing there that could stop Anthony from behaving the way he was behaving. I mean, she could say, look, he's come into my house, he's stolen my bra, he's stolen my knickers, he's clearly coming into my personal property, he's moving things around, he's terrorising my life, he's following me everywhere I go. But the difficulty is, it's really hard to prove that. It's really hard for her to be able to say this is what's happening. So without any physical evidence, police can only sympathetically listen. They just couldn't really do much. What they did do was they advised to Tracy that she told her family, and she did, because she hadn't said a word. Only her and Andy, her husband, knew that this was happening at the time. She just didn't really want to be going and telling other people. She didn't want to involve anyone else in it, because she thought, or they thought really as a couple, that they could handle this. So she tells her family, and obviously they are shocked, but also they're quite powerless, because what can they do? If Tracy and Andy themselves can't sort it out, what's her mum and dad and her sister, who live a few miles away, what can they do about it? So I don't know if this is because they had told the police and they told their family, but Tracy and her husband Andy, they take a sort of different attitude towards it now. It's still going on. He's still there day and night outside of their house. He's still phoning the house day and night, and he's still putting things through the door. But they decide, you know what? Fuck it. We're not going to let the guy drag us down. We're going to try and just live a normal life. So they start doing all the things that young couples should do together. They go on dates, they go out walking, they go trips. They do everything that a young couple would do. But everywhere, and I mean everywhere they go, fucking Anthony Barstow is there. He's always there, just ahead of them. If they said, we're going to go to this park in the country for a walk, he would be in that park. How is he doing it? How does he know where they are at every moment of every day? So Tracy starts to, understandably, lose the plot at this point. Now, so far she's been quite calm about the whole thing. Actually, not internally, she's not been that calm. She's not been that calm internally at all. The truth is, they're actually in their house with the curtains closed day and night, and both on sleeping pills, because they're so on edge all of the time that this is what he's actually driven their life to. But externally, she's always tried to appear quite calm. However, she loses the plot. And what makes her lose the plot, the moment that makes it, is her and her husband head out one night. They go to a restaurant. They sit down. They take their jackets off. They settle down, order the drinks, think, we're just going to have a wee lovely meal, turn round, and he's sitting 2 tables away from them, just looking at them. And she starts screaming. She starts just going absolutely nuts. If it was me, I would have been going nuts way before this point. But this is the point where she just flips. She starts telling him to just basically get to. She just absolutely becomes unhinged. So she goes to her bosses in her work and she asks the question to them, is it possible that he may have bugged her house? Is that why he always knew ahead of time where she was going to be? And she was laughed out of the office. For fuck's sake, that is not helpful. She was told, and get this, this made me rage when I read these words. She was told that she was being an emotional, paranoid female. Get to fuck with that comment. There's no room for that comment. That's absolutely ridiculous. So with Tracy now at complete breaking point, she goes back to the police and they start to sort of sit up and pay a bit of attention to her story. So they start to watch Anthony Barstow closely and they realise, oh yeah, she's actually right. He is following her everywhere she goes and he is sitting outside of her house every night. So they arrest him for breach of the peace. Yay, great. And he's given a short sentence and a restraining order and told in no uncertain terms to stay away from Tracy and anyone in Tracy's family. But does he? Of course not. Days after his release, I think he was only in for like 30 days, or I think that's what I read, 30 days, something like that. Tracy is in her house. She looks out of her bedroom window onto the street, and there he is watching her. He's sitting on a wall across the road, looking right at her, and he waves. Oh, so creepy. Ugh. So she calls the police. Of course she does. Immediately calls the police. They spring into action. They try and find him, but they can't. They can't find him. Why? I'll tell you why. Because he was using a police scanner to listen to all the police calls so that he knew when they were searching for him. So that he knew the exact times to hide. In those police calls, he also overheard what areas they were searching, so he knew how to avoid them. So they can't find him. Now the next thing I'm going to say comes from Tracy's diary. This is the following day after he had been sitting on the wall waving at her. At 7:45 a.m, I get out of my car at the local shops to collect the newspaper. I see him standing at the edge of the row of shops watching me. I continue into the newsagents and I ask Mr. Patel, the owner, to ring 999. I wait in the shop until the policeman arrives. He then takes the details and he asks me to accompany him to where Burstow had been standing. So we do this. Burstow isn't there. So we carry on around to the back of the shops and into the car park at the back. This is when I see him dart down an alley. We run down the alley, we turn right into another alley, and up ahead is Burstow. He's just strolling along with a bottle of water as if nothing is wrong. I wait and I watch while Burstow is arrested. The policeman and Burstow start walking towards me, so I just run back in to the paper shop and I wait for a short time until I think the coast is clear. He is put back in Winchester prison. So Burstow's back in prison, and while he's there, the phone calls to the house, they still continue. The letters, they are still arriving through Tracy's door. Now he's been sentenced to 18 months, and while he's in prison, his house is searched and they find some, well, it gets referred to as computer discs. I think we're talking floppy discs here. Remember those? They seem really retro now. But on these discs, they find detailed information on the entire Morgan family. Everybody in Tracy's extended family, he has all the details. He has the addresses and the phone numbers of sister, mother, aunt, and almost every friend that she ever had. On that disc, they also find information, this is mad, information regarding a hitman he had attempted to hire to kill Tracy's husband, Andy. They also find notes of every move Tracy was ever making, every place that she was ever visiting. So now they think, okay, let's search Tracy's house while he's in prison. Let's search her house and see what we can turn up. And turns out Tracy had been right all along. He had bugged their house. He had put listening devices in the sofa, the bedroom, the kitchen, and at work he had put one in her office. Now he'd placed them so discreetly, and they were tiny little devices, so small you'd never see them unless you were looking for them. So Tracy and Andy's lives they're completely ruined now by Anthony Burstow, and they need to get away on holiday. They need to just get away. So he's in prison. They just want to get out of the country. A much needed break and time to just reconnect as a couple. So they do that. They go, they have a month in Africa. They come back. What do they find when they come back? They return to their house to find that the window from their living room has been entirely removed. The house has been ransacked. Family photos are missing and their wedding video is missing. Anthony Burstow had appealed his conviction and was successful in that appeal. He had been released the day that they went on holiday and nobody had told Tracy. So she's having a bloody lovely time over in Africa for a month with her husband, thinking this is great, he's in prison, finally I can relax. Little does she know, back in the UK, he's actually fucking out and about. He's actually walking about the place. He's actually walking about her house at this time. Oh, it just gets more, this story, I swear, it just gets more nuts by the fucking minute. Also, the other thing, just to interject here slightly, it's really interesting that this is happening in the 90s, and it's a time when social media just wasn't, I don't think Facebook had even, Facebook hadn't even started at this point. So, can you imagine what this guy would have been like if he'd had access to Tracy's Facebook? Fuck me, would have been terrible. And Facebook makes stalking an incredibly easy thing to do, and you would be lying, yes, you would be lying if you said you had not gone through someone's Facebook page at some point, because we all do. We've all done it. Just admit it, okay? Anyway, back to Tracy. Tracy writes this. It was during this period of our ordeal that my husband realised he just couldn't take it anymore. He'd already beaten Burstow up when we found him creeping towards our house one night when it all began. He did not know what else to do in order to protect me. He just couldn't cope with my changed personality and my depression. So he left and he never came back. We divorced 12 years ago. I've never heard from him or his family since. After he'd gone, I'd no option but to move back to my parents' house in Berkshire. The silent calls, the unwanted mail, they continued while I was at my parents' house. Oh God, your marriage is falling apart. Your life is just unbelievable at this point. So, while living with her parents, the torture, it just never stops. The calls just keep coming. And her mum and dad are doing their best to intercept the phones, but every time they're picking them up, they're just getting silent calls. And there's just new letters, postcards, everything is arriving at the house for Tracy. It's really brutal. One day, 2 packages arrive for Tracy. Now, I'm going to warn you, this next bit's a wee bit nasty. It's a wee bit grim. It might make you feel a bit sick, might make you bulk. There's 2 packages, and inside of the first one, there is a piece of paper which says, "Do you miss your old life?" And there is a roll of film inside that package. When the roll of film is developed, it's photos of Tracy's old house, her life, her going to the gym, her out with her husband. So, photographs that he had taken of her. Inside the other one is a used sanitary towel, and it's wrapped inside a piece of paper that says, "Never trust anything that bleeds 3 to 5 days every month, but doesn't die." Oh, horrible. Just horrible. So it's after this, police are they're actually doing everything they can at this moment to protect Tracy and to find Anthony Burstow and just get him into prison, just get him out of Tracy's life. Not long after that happened with the packages, Anthony is found and he is arrested and he's sent to prison for 3 years, which is great, which is really good. There's such a catalogue of offences here that Anthony has committed, and police are all over it now. They know, they understand everything he's done. What's brilliant is the thing that they actually catch him on for this 3-year sentence and arrest him on is that he came into Tracy's mum and dad's house. No, not to the house. He came into Tracy's mum and dad's garden and he stole a bra from the washing line. Don't know if it was Tracy's bra, don't know if it was her mum's, but that was actually the thing when it came down to it. Although there's this huge catalogue of all the things that he's done, that's what they were actually able to arrest him on. And then everything else that had gone before was the reason that he went to prison for 3 years. So Tracy, and this is where I really admire her, she begins to meet with police and she starts to talk about stalking laws. Remember, there's nothing in place at this point. We're still a little bit away from it here, really. So she begins to campaign for change. A change in the way that victims can be helped. So there's a TV programme in the UK, gets involved, follows Tracy's story, and, it begins to really get attention. It's great. Her attempting to change this law. And she's telling her story. She's very out there. She'll say, I've been through real hell with this man. Now, it's during the time when she's doing that she's told he's actually going to be released early. He's actually only going to serve maybe 20 months of his service for good behaviour. Oh, God. So she's asked by the media, does she want to talk more about the case? And she says no. When she knows he's coming out of prison, she just kind of shuts down at that point and she says no, because I don't want to do anything that's going to provoke him. I don't want to give him any reason at all to come after her any more than he already has. But, and this is just so fucking hard for this woman at this point. She knows it's not over. She knows at this point he's coming out of prison. This is not the end of it. He's not gone away for a short spell and he's going to come out and forget who Tracy Morgan is. He knows exactly who she is and he knows exactly what he's going to do when he gets out. So Tracy's now got a new boyfriend. She no longer is at this point living with her parents and she's trying to get her life back to normal. Days after he's released, she's in a new house and the phone calls begin. The letters start coming through the door. The cards. I mean, this is 5 years she's put up with this. 5 years. I would be tearing my bloody hair out at this point. I would just be losing my fucking mind. I'm sure she was losing her mind at this point. Wherever she's driving, he's there in the rear view mirror. Late one night, she looks outside of her house and there he is. He's parked outside her house watching her. So she immediately phones the police. Now, for the next 3 years of Tracy's life, she gets into what can only be described as legal hell. Oh, it's so hellish. Now, I'm just going to give you the big overview of it because it becomes so intricate. It becomes a farce. At one point, it just becomes utterly insane. For 3 years, so there are 20 different convictions against Burstow and he is put back into prison. But he's then let out again on good behaviour. So as soon as he's out, he's sending more cards, more phone calls, he's following her everywhere she goes. He's arrested again. He's put back in prison. Guess what happens? He's allowed out for good behaviour. I mean, it's just insane. He gets arrested again, one more time, this time put in, and then the appeals begin. So there's appeals, more appeals. Tracy has to keep going to court, keep telling her story. She actually has to sit in a courtroom with the man who has terrorised her for this length of time and say, this is what he did, this is what he did, this is what he did. These are all the things that he's caused in my life. But he just keeps being released. They just keep letting him out. The sentence is always somehow overturned. And I don't know what really the root of that is, but I can actually only put it down to, and this may be, okay, I'm no lawyer and I don't understand law and I know that things can be manipulated and things can be tricky, but the impression I get from the overall story is that a lot of the time it was painted in court for Tracy that she was just kind of overreacting. She was just being a bit kind of like silly about it. Like, you know, yeah, so there's this guy that's kind of like attracted to you, but it feels like you're, you know, just kind of like, I think you're taking it a bit far. You know, I think she was made to feel like she was an idiot in this situation when we know that she was absolutely not an idiot. So one of the times, right, this is mad, one of the times that he's imprisoned, this actually makes history. It makes the history law books because he's the first person to ever be imprisoned for inflicting grievous bodily harm through psychological damage. Interesting. I think that's really interesting. So, I mean, that for me is a real up bit of the story. That's a break because I'm like, well, somebody in that system, in that law system, is understanding that the psychological damage Tracy is feeling, it actually is a reason to put someone in prison, because you can't put someone through that. You cannot fucking put someone through that and there not be consequences. So crazy shit starts to happen. Like, he changes his name legally to the name of one of Tracy's ex-boyfriends. I mean, she obviously goes, what? How is he allowed to do that? And she's told by the courts, well, he's got a right to do that. Everyone can change the name. Anyone can change the name, should they want to. So just put up with it. And the whole case just gets bogged down in details, and the whole bigger picture of it, it just gets lost. The fact is, this has gone on 9 years at this point. But it gets lost, it gets swamped down in the details. The system, it swallows up this case, and in the end, he ends up being free. So Tracy, as I said earlier on, she's a strong woman, but she must have been, at this point, just so despairing. What happens next is not a good thing, but it is a sort of ending. Tracy's mum receives a phone call one day while Anthony Burstow is free, and the phone call is from the police, and it's to tell her that he's been arrested for attempted murder. Obviously, her blood runs cold at the words attempted murder. You can only imagine what she's imagining, but it wasn't Tracy that Burstow had attempted to kill. Using his new name since he had come out of prison, he had begun dating a woman called Lorraine. Now, this woman lived not that far from Tracy. Tracy didn't know her, she just happened to live not that far. So Lorraine and Burstow had been dating for a couple of weeks, and he was over at her house one afternoon, and Lorraine's son arrives home early from work, and he finds that he can't get into the house, and inside the house he can hear his mum screaming. But Anthony Burstow had double locked the doors, and he was attempting to strangle Lorraine. He then took out a Stanley knife, and he told her, "We're going to die together." So her son, brilliant here, brilliant job, quick thinking, he smashes in the windows at this point, because he's thinking, I just need to get in to the house, because he can, it's terrible, he can see what's happening, but he can't actually physically get in to the property. So whilst Lorraine is really struggling with Burstow, he holds her arms, ooh, horrible, he holds her arm over the draining board, and he starts to attempt to cut off her hand. So there's blood all over the place. Now he slips on the blood, and he's lying on the floor. The son has managed to smash the windows, and she dives out of the window at this point. Her hand is hanging off at this point. But that dive out of the window, that saved her life. On July 4th, 2001, Anthony Burstow was jailed for life for attempted murder, having to serve a minimum of 7 years. And because he's now deemed so dangerous, his release can only be decided by the Home Secretary. Let's just absorb that for a second. It will be up to the Home the UK, whoever that is at the time, the UK Home Secretary, to decide if he's ever released. I mean, just to step back, the journey of this story, we've gone from a woman who went to her bosses and said, there's a guy harassing me, and she was called a paranoid, emotional female, to a man in prison who can only be released by the Home Secretary. That is some fucking leap in a, you know what I mean? That is some crazy leap in a story. She was right all the time. She was, yeah. So the real damage of all of this, the 9 years of the life that she had to live, it finally hits her when he's put into prison for life. When she knows that there's a kind of finality about that, and she has a full-on breakdown at that point. I'm glad to say Tracy has recovered from that breakdown. She does a lot of fantastic charity work now. She tirelessly campaigns for victims of stalking. She says, a crucial thing for victims in this situation is to be taken seriously. Employers, colleagues, friends and relatives must not dismiss people like me as paranoid, emotional and the victim of a minor crime. When you are trying to retain your sanity, stay alive because you don't really know what will happen next. To be believed is crucial. So yeah, as I say, she's a survivor. She made it out of that. It's a crazy one, but that ends the story of Tracy Morgan.
Hi, I'm Roseanne, and I'm the creator and host of California Dreaming, True Crime Tales from the Golden State. Like many of you, I have a long-standing fascination with mysteries, crime, and justice. I bring you a different story each week that involves an event with a California connection. I have a few episodes up that are available for download on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Stitcher. I tell my stories with a quiet intensity, something to listen to when you need to get your true crime fix on, but you also need to wind down. So, check it out when you have a moment. California Dreaming, True Crime Tales from the Golden State. Now available on the Orbital Jigsaw Network.
Now, I could have picked a million stalking stories, but the Tracy Morgan one really stays with me purely because it's so sustained. 9 years is a long, long bloody time to have somebody stalking you. You know, there's all these stories where someone's stalked for a month and then they're dramatically, you know, stabbed, killed, shot by their stalker, or the stalker, you know, goes to prison and all that sort of stuff. But I just felt there was something in the Tracy story that's, well, it's just horrific because it's 9 years. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. Okay, the second story. It's a well-known one, but it's bloody good. It's Tonya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan. Tonya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan are two of the most famous ice skaters the world has ever known. Both absolutely incredible skaters, winning lots of medals, lots of competitions. Their story is one of the biggest sporting scandals ever to happen, driven entirely by obsession. So Nancy Kerrigan was America's sporting sweetheart, an absolutely beautiful skater, incredibly talented and set to become probably one of the world's biggest female skaters. She is absolutely exceptional to watch. I mean, I know loads of you will have seen lots of footage of Nancy skating, but her moves are insane. And those outfits, well, they are fantastic. I mean, there's one that looks like it's made out of lace. It looks like a wedding dress. Oh God, she was brilliant. So she was competing to win a place at the 1994 Olympics, and it was all looking good for Nancy. She was on course to win the top spot for the USA skating team, but there was someone else who wanted that spot on the team. Tonya Harding. A few years younger than Nancy, Tonya was blonde, where Nancy was dark-haired. And in terms of I'm pointing that out because there's going to be a big rivalry between them, and it just, the two of them just looked very, very different as skaters, and this gave the media something to kind of hang on to when reporting on their rivalry and on the relationship between them. So Tonya was described as someone who didn't necessarily fit the ice princess, love that term, ice princess world, because she wasn't as refined, she wasn't as graceful as Nancy, but she was an excellent skater. She was absolutely excellent. Now, you know, I could skirt around this for ages, but I won't. Basically, there was a massive difference between the two of them, and it comes down to this. Tonya came from a world economically which doesn't produce a lot of world-class skaters. And before anybody gets on their high horse or gets annoyed by that statement, I truly believe anybody from anywhere is capable of being the best at anything, regardless of class, race, fucking gender, any of that. I don't think that gets in anybody's way. If you've got the talent, if you've got the skill, I think you can be the best. But the world of figure skating and some of those sports, they do tend to be dominated by those who can afford to send their kids to private tutors at a young age, and that just wasn't Tonya. She wasn't from a family who could afford that. She was just skilled and she was determined. And as we'll soon discover, she was obsessed with becoming the best in the world. She was really driven by wanting to be at the top. And I suppose when you're the underdog, then I sometimes wonder if you don't know that your desire, your drive to be the best is actually turning into an obsession. I wonder if that sort of creeps up on you slightly and you don't quite know it's there. So who was the better skater out of the two? Well, it really divided opinions. In terms of technical work, they were roughly equal. Many believe Nancy had just the slight edge in terms of presentation. Her grace, shall we say, was better than Tonya's. But Tonya had passion. She had real spirit. She's quite electric to watch when she's skating. You know, Nancy's got lovely lines. It's beautiful. It's very skilled. It's very technical. Tonya, something different. A different kind of energy, you know, a different kind of, still technically absolutely great, but just a more erratic kind of energy around it. Nancy Kerrigan, I mean, in terms of popularity, I'm going to say was way more popular than Tonya. I mean, there's footage of people holding up banners when they're doing their practice things, because they would let the public come in and just sort of watch these things. But I mean, people would be holding up banners that said things like Nancy Kerrigan for president. You know, one of those like homemade banners that people made. I bloody love a homemade banner. Do you know that? I once made one for a Kylie Minogue concert that said Barry loves Kylie. And like a dick, I held it up for the whole entire concert. My fucking arms were aching. I mean, I was only 12, so, you know, if you're judging me, give me a break. So during all of this, Tonya's mother, she was really visible during the rise to fame for Tonya. She was constantly giving interviews. She really, really pushed her daughter. So I'm going to put this picture up, and this picture that I found when I was watching documentaries and I was reading through stuff, it really made me laugh. It's Tonya's mother talking about how she pushes her daughter. And she basically says, the way I do it is I tell her, you can't do it. You're no good. You're shit at this. And basically that's going to make her the best skater in the world. Because if I can just be the voice in her ear that says to her all the time, you're shit, you can't do this, that's going to make her into this world-class skater. But what's hilarious is the whole entire time she's standing there wearing a pair of those ridiculous 1970s huge, I mean this wasn't the 70s, this was like the 90s, but she's wearing those massive 70s glasses that have got like a sort of tint on them, and she's wearing a long fur coat with a parrot on her shoulder, and the whole time she's talking, she sometimes turns around and it's as if she's telling the story of this to the parrot and not the camera. She's, bonkers. So brilliant parenting there from Tonya's mum. Now I'm making fun of that, but actually the truth is Tonya's mum was an alcoholic, and this made Tonya's dream, her absolute obsession with escaping her life and becoming the best, even more pressing for her. So Nancy was starting to get lots of advertising at this time. She was making lots of money, and she was becoming the face of many beauty products and different kinds of foods. Now this wasn't happening for Tonya, but it's because I think she was harder to market. It's ridiculous, but up against Nancy, she did seem a little bit rougher, and so no one was really bringing her the advertising deals. So the rivalry between them is fierce, and of course the press, they're straight on it. They're putting them up against each other. And it's said that Tonya was livid at the fact that she was being overlooked in the world of advertising and all those sponsorship deals, and she began to become obsessed with wanting to gain what Nancy had. She was obsessed with winning. She was obsessed with being the best. She was obsessed with basically beating out everybody who could get in her way when she wanted to get to the top, and this had really taken over her life. So the national competitions are taking place, and every skater is skating their heart out to win a place and get on the Olympic team. Now Nancy finishes her skating practice one day. Now as normal, she gets off the ice, she heads towards the locker room, and as she's approaching the lockers, she's attacked. She's kneecapped. A figure appears with a baseball bat and attacks her legs. You can find this, if you've not already seen it. The footage of the aftermath is just horrible. She is screaming and she's crying. She's surrounded by her coach and lots of doctors. It's not nice. It's not nice at all. So it's immediately clear this is no random attack. This is sabotage. Someone wanted Nancy out of the picture. Her legs have been pretty badly injured, and it will be 3 weeks before she can walk again. This puts Nancy out of the running for the Olympics. Now, at first, police treat this as they say straight away, this is a very definite and a very clear attack, but they don't point the finger directly at anyone. So the next week, the final competition to decide who's going to be in the Olympic team comes around. And it's really sad because Nancy has to sit there and watch. She actually comes to the arena every day. They give her a little seat up in the box, and she gets to watch all of the people that she's been training with for years skate for a place in the Olympics. And when she's watching, what does she see? She sees Tonya Harding win and get a place on the Olympic team. So police have done some investigating at this point. They've started to look around, figure out what they think's going on, and they start closing in on Tonya. They start thinking, she's responsible. Of course, she denies any involvement, but under pressure, her bodyguard confesses that he had hired 2 hitmen to take Nancy out of the running, and apparently the whole thing had been masterminded by Tonya's husband. Now, of course, it wasn't just him. Tonya was obviously the biggest part of it. This information that comes out is actually chilling. I hated this. It turns out that the attacker who hit Nancy with the baseball bats hadn't actually done the job correctly. They were instructed to damage her legs beyond all repair. God, that's fucking horrible, isn't it? But actually they'd only inflicted temporary damage. So Tonya, she's getting off scot-free. She makes a statement saying, I had no involvement in this. My husband masterminded this whole thing without any of my knowledge. Right, Tonya. Right, shut up, you liar. So there is a positive here for Nancy. She went for intensive physiotherapy. And a month later, she was skating again. Good. Great stuff. So, the Olympics hadn't happened yet. It looked like Nancy was finding her form again, so she's given a place on the Olympic team. She's given it because really, if the attack hadn't happened, she would have definitely been there anyway. But of course, what does this mean? It means that when she goes to the Olympics, she has to train and be alongside Tonya Harding every single day. I would find that so hard. I just don't know how. Yeah, I mean, I would do it, but fuck, that would be hard. I think I'd be constantly thinking, what damage can I do with my skate to you? Oh God. So you can imagine the press at this time, the stories, the buzz around this, absolutely huge. So the Olympics happen and they both compete, both perform really well, but neither of them unfortunately take home the gold. A Ukrainian skater kind of comes out of nowhere and wins gold, but Nancy does get silver, so good for her. I mean, I think fucking getting silver at the Olympics, literally weeks after your knees have been battered in by baseball bats, is a pretty good achievement. Tonya, she comes in 8th. There's footage of her and she's just crying the whole time. She's just crying and crying because she cannot believe she hasn't won the gold medal. In the months after this, Tonya was given a lifetime ban from skating and she was charged $100,000 for her involvement in the case. Although she was still saying, no, I had nothing to do with it. No, it definitely wasn't me. She was still fine. Now, the upside of the story is that Nancy's gone on to live a great life. She's got lovely kids. She was on, we call it, Strictly, it's called Strictly Come Dancing over here. Dancing like a star. Dancing like a star? Dancing with a star? Or something like that in America. Anyway, she was on Dancing with Dancing with the Stars, that's what it's called. Nancy still gets advertising deals. So, no gold medal for her, but at least she survived. At least, she's lived a life and she's happy. Tonya, that's a very fucking different story. Tonya is now a recluse. Complete recluse. She's just retreated back into complete reclusivity. She gave one interview in 2014, but that's really it. She lives in a really rundown area with her husband, and the last photo that's been seen of her, I'll put it up. It's kind of shocking because she's unrecognisable. You would understand that, of course. It's been years since we've seen all these images of Tonya Harding, but yeah, she just looks incredibly different. Her weight really shocked me, and I'm not body shaming that at all. But it's such a change because we're so used to seeing those Tonya Harding images of her on the ice doing all those spins, or in the interview going, oh, I didn't have anything to do with it, I don't know anything about it. And when you see her all these years later, it's a real shock when you see her. So whatever happened to her mum, I don't know. Whatever happened to that parrot, I don't know that either. I hope they're both okay. So that ends the story of Tonya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan. Now, that last story, it might seem like a gear change from stalking, but the obsession in Tonya, it fascinates me. The obsession in those around her, driven by greed, driven by desire to win that gold medal, to the point where you would actually maim another human being. It's obsession at another level. Okay, that ends the 2 stories I'm going to tell you on obsession. Now, I have no doubt I will be returning to this topic very soon. It's so huge, and I think I'm only scratching the surface of what I really want to get into with it. I was doing loads of research this week, and I kept finding articles that I was like, I want to tell that story. I need to tell that story. God, that's got to be a future one. I've got to find these, and there's so many that come under obsession. So in the future, I will come back to this. I did find these, I noted these down because I thought these were funny. I did find these stories about obsession that made me laugh. These headlines. A man says, I'm obsessed with having sex with my car. What the fuck? The woman who who's obsessed with pretending to be furniture. And my favourite, the man who's obsessed with collecting his body hair. I mean, they all need looked at. You know what I mean? They need a bit of examination at some point. Okay, so I'm just going to say finally, if you want to get in touch, it would be lovely to hear from you. So there is the Facebook group. There is the Facebook page, Extraordinary Stories Podcast. You'll find me there. You can find me on Instagram, or you can go to Twitter at Extra Stories Pod. Also, I'm on Patreon. So thank you to those who are supporting me on Patreon. I will be, in the future, not too far away actually, I'm going to be looking into some merchandise. I'm going to start to, I'll start small, but there'll be some stuff out there. And when that happens, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I'm thinking maybe 3 weeks, that's going to be available probably to Patreon members first. As always, iTunes reviews are welcomed. All right, thanks to everybody for listening. I do really appreciate you giving me your time and letting a Scottish man ramble in your ears. So, as always, if you know a great story, if you know an extraordinary story, let me know. Okay? Goodbye.
It didn't affect me really one way or the other. I would imagine from the look on his face, let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over.